functions with a song. Or the choir is not here, but you are here. Are you ready or should I continue? Good evening. This is how I wanted it to start, and it started just that way. These are what University of Limpopo students do in between writing exams. Program directors, good evening. Let me start by welcoming my bosses, and the danger is if I miss one of them, then I'm in trouble. The Chair of Council, Mr. Nefolo Bodwe, thanks for honoring this occasion. With you, we've got a number of council members, Mr. Dube, Dr. Mathapi, Advocate Bongo, and Mr. Rachid. Those are external council members. The internal ones I normally don't recognize because for some reason they report to me, though they are my bosses. Special word of welcome to my colleagues in executive management, my colleagues in management, my academic colleagues, my admin colleagues, the Student Representative Council. I've seen them here. When I asked them, you guys, we invited you, they said, no, we're looking after you, Professor. So that's the type of relationship we have. Professor Jeffrey Bashet, an old colleague of ours, and he's currently the Vice President of Research at the South African Medical Research Council. It just shows how serious we take. Prof. Scott, thanks for having made time to be with us. Some people recognize you as a member of the staff of the University of Limpopo because we do a lot with you. Thanks, Professor, for being with us and for agreeing to be here tonight. The MEC of Education shows the good relationship we have with the province. I know I've got our partners from Nedbank, I saw our partners from Standard Bank, and of course, Professor Marian Albert, with your guests. You know, I was saying, when we extended the invitation to you to say, Professor, come and join us this evening, knowing you, I knew that despite all odds, you will be with us here tonight. Thanks, Professor, for being here. She was the oldest serving staff member at the University of Limpopo. You know, if post pensionable age, you give your employer 30 extra years. I was saying some people can't do the first 30. Now, if you are Dr. Nhandini, I knew you would make time to be here. Together with Marian's family, you know, I wasn't surprised when you confirmed that, yes, I will be part of that celebration. in the program. Ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of just know that you are welcome, warmly so. And how can I forget the chair of council and the chair of the HR committee, Dr. Matape. I've got the Ulwasa executive. You know, whenever I run short of what to report on council, I say something about Ulwasa. We know what they are doing, and believe you me, somewhere during the evening we'll see the good work they are doing. Tonight is that special night where we come in together to recognize those of our colleagues who do more than just a call of duty. You know, most of us, we drag ourselves to the university at 8 o'clock. We're supposed to be there at 7:30, but we struggle to be there at 8 o'clock. And normally at 25 minutes to 4, we switch our computers off so that the official knocking off time of 4 o'clock should not find us on campus. Otherwise, the Vice-Chancellor might give you another assignment. We're here to recognize those colleagues who pushed it further than that. We're here to celebrate with them. And believe you me, young staff members, we do have accounts at, which shop do you guys like most at Mall of the North? Huh? Icon. I know you do have accounts at Icon. H&M, does it have an account system? So we will make sure that as we reward colleagues, they go and do good to those accounts. I hate it whenever they phone me to say, is that the university? Yes. Is that the principal? And quietly I'll call the colleague to the side and say, H&M, they were looking for you. So colleagues, it's a great evening. They gave it a name, Vice-Chancellor's Excellence Award, where, as I say, we will recognize, celebrate, and reward those colleagues who have gone beyond just the call of duty. Teaching and learning, research, and community engagement, where we try by all means to make sure that they carry equal weight, and lately everybody is making noise about it, that community engagement should be infused into the curriculum. I know the executive deans will have something to say. Where's Professor Siwe? Where? Oh, over there. You know that big ship of yours, I parked next to it, apologetically so. And I was looking for you the whole even before we started, and I said, knowing my colleague, I know we're waiting for that good moment. I know the Vice-Chancellor is normally expected to say something after the prizes have been given. This year, I'm not going to say anything. To the Vice-Chancellor's Excellence Award at the University of Limpopo.
VC and Principal, Prof. Mohalong, and your entourage, executive, students, staff, academics, professors, all of you. Chairperson of Council, Mr. Novolo Godwin, and your entourage, members of Council, all students and all of us. Our guest speaker today is an emeritus professor in the Center for Higher Education Development at the University of Cape Town, having been Director of Academic Development for many years. He has served on task teams and undertaken research for various policy bodies, including the Department of Higher Education and Training, the Council of Higher Education, and the World Bank, and he led the research and report writing for the CHD's investigation into undergraduate curriculum reform, published in 2013. He has also served on the DHETS Foundation's provision reference group, which advises the minister on policy and funding for extended curriculum programs since its inception. He was awarded an honorary doctorate, LLD, by Rhodes University in 2019 for his contribution to higher education development. His main research interests are in higher education policy related to teaching and learning, comparative models for widening successful participation in higher education, curriculum development, and the funding of university education. Please put your hands together for Professor Ian Scott.
Very scary, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think that I've ever been live on YouTube before. I think I know what YouTube is. It's that wonderful thing where I can listen to very old rock and roll and blues music quite often, and even has pictures. So that's quite wonderful. What a world we live in. To the Chair of Council, Nicole Bodwin, and other council members, to the VC, Professor Mohalong, and the executive, to the deans, and I think we can say all protocols observed, to students and colleagues here. Now you'll see why this is scary. Dumelang bomme. Bontate. Teleboha lenna. I'm honored to be here, and I thank the University of Limpopo, and in particular Professors Madadje and Chabaya, for inviting me to participate in this wonderful celebration. I have had a long interest in this university. I last visited some time ago, but I followed its performance with great interest because I truly do believe that universities of this kind, rural universities and the comprehensive universities, rather than my alma mater, are the key to transformation in higher education in this country. That's where things are going to happen, or are happening, in fact already. So another reason for my appreciation of this university is Professor Njabula Ndebele, who was VC here, for those of you who don't know, in the days of the University of the North at Turfville, and later became the VC at UCT. Of the 4 VCs that I worked and knew well at UCT, he was the one I worked with most closely. and I'm most appreciated for his fine and humane academic mind. I learned a great deal from him, and I'm most grateful that you redeployed him to UCT for us all. Thank you. The awards that you're making this evening cover all the major areas of academic work, which I'll be speaking about a lot. Research, teaching, which covers a multitude of sins. In fact, I would say it's the whole educational process, and community engagement. And these are really the three great pillars of the university's contribution to our country and the world. So I felt it incumbent on me. I'm usually a teaching and learning person speaking to an audience that is sympathetic. But I felt it incumbent on me this evening to speak about the relationships between those major areas of work and what they mean for academia and its role in this country. I am aware, colleagues, that I'm keeping you from your starters, so I've become increasingly unpopular as this talk goes on. And it is also a topic that is bound to get me into trouble with one or other constituency, if not all of them. So I have made provision for an early departure if it should be necessary. But the achievements that we are honouring tonight represent a wonderfully wide range of work in terms of their purpose, their type, their subject matter. We at the universities have come to take this range for granted. But if you step back a bit and think about it afresh, it is truly remarkable that such a diversity of contributions come from a single institution, and that this happens in good universities around the world. What other kind of institution or organization, seriously, could produce such a strong array of achievements? Now, in our rapidly changing world, where established institutions of all kinds seem to be under threat, if not for social reasons, then for technological ones and 4IRs and so on, it seems more important than ever to think carefully about where our strengths lie, what our strengths lie in, and what commonality underlies the kinds of achievements that we have seen, that we are seeing tonight. In a sense, what kind of soil can enable such a diversity of species to thrive? There are quick answers to this, to these key questions, but I've learned to distrust them as they are likely to be superficial and hence misleading and potentially obstructive to our ability to do what we need to do and to make the most of what we have in academia. Excuse me, I just have to check this to be assured I am keeping an eye on the time. I'm asking Professor Chabai to throw something at me if I go on too long. Where is that? There you are. Thank you. So, I've learned to distrust these quick answers, and I think that we have to think very carefully if we are going to do the best we can and preserve ourselves in the long run. My own field, academic development, or as I prefer to call it in recent years, higher education and development, of course has teaching at its heart, but it also depends increasingly on research to provide an academic basis, sound basis for its practices. And of course, all our work is intended to benefit underserved communities. So it is essential for us in this field, and for me personally, to try to understand the relationship between these great pillars of our work, how we can work with them best and not be at war amongst each other. So from this perspective, I would be very glad to offer some views on the relationship between these pillars, as I will call them, and on some implications of this for how we see ourselves. My own understanding of this really important field is strongly influenced by a little book that came out about 3 decades ago by a man called Ernest Boyer. Some of you will have heard of him. then the president of the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching in the United States. It was a seminal book on the major areas of university work. A small book, and I recommend it to your attention, but it has had a very big influence internationally on how we see universities and academic work. And it's called Scholarship Reconsidered, Priorities of the Professoriate. Of course, in America, the professoriate is much wider a group of people than we have here. Now, at the time Boyer wrote this book, the predominant academic view of scholarship was very narrow. So his effort to create an inclusive understanding of scholarship was groundbreaking. And he conceptualized it in 4 ways, in 4 categories. Some of them will be familiar to you. First of all, scholarship of discovery, which really refers to original research that advances knowledge. Discovery, it said, involved being the first to find out, to know, or to reveal original or revised theories, principles, knowledge, or creations. So it is largely research as we know it. The second important, and that of course we all understand to be scholarship. That's where the easy part ends. The next one is called the scholarship of integration, described as making connections across the disciplines, placing the specializations in larger context, illuminating data in a revealing way, often educating non-specialists too. In other words, it is the synthesis of information, of insights, of knowledge across disciplines, or topics within disciplines, or even across time. Integration in this sense usually refers to research, but it may also be a key element of teaching and learning and community engagement. Much is said these days about the importance of interdisciplinary work. Do we not hear it often? But we have to question to what extent it is truly valued and rewarded in relation to scholarship within more conventional disciplinary boundaries. I'll comment on that later. The third one is the scholarship of application, which later became known as the scholarship of engagement, which is very close to what you're doing here. It uses academic work as a basis for service outside the academic community largely, or even professional bodies. It is what we now generally know as community engagement, but to qualify as scholarship, it must be rooted in academic work, involve the rigor and application of disciplinary expertise, and be open to peer review. Regarding this kind of work as scholarship was very rare in Boyer's day. Yet, here we are making awards for it. However, some would say that there are still major issues about the full recognition of community engagement as proper academic work and as scholarship. Very critical. And finally, and of particular interest to me, and perhaps what was the most significant move, is the scholarship of teaching. What Boyer originally had in mind, is now forgotten, was the act of teaching itself. Teaching was the academic activity, where teaching is seen as, to quote, developing the knowledge, skill, mind, character, or ability of others. And that sort of teaching means not only transmitting knowledge, but transforming and extending it as well. Early conception and the later one, is that SOFL involves the systematic study of teaching and learning processes, taking it out of the level of just teaching, and I say just, lifting it up into an area of study, formal study, and crucially, that such studies must be published and subject to peer review. Lee Shulman, who was a later president of the Carnegie Foundation, teaching must go public. This perspective is extremely important. It was not only a major step towards changing the status of teaching, but also towards bringing it out from the private confines, the remarkably private confines of the lecture room, into the light of intellectual inquiry and evaluation. This conception provides a very strong basis and justification for the professionalization of academic staff in their role as educators. I will never forget in a Senate meeting once having a quiet fight with a dean while other stuff was going on about some teaching matter. And as we were walking out of the Senate room at UCT, he said to me, "My boy," I often got called my boy by all of the people at Senate. I would like to be called that now, but it doesn't happen often. "My boy, you make the mistake of thinking that I'm an educationist." He was the dean of the Faculty of Commerce. He said, "I'm not an educationist, I am an economist." That, when I was very young, taught me a great deal about how people see the disciplines and the work in a field. So anyway, Boyer's work makes a powerful case that each of the three pillars of university work is actually in itself a manifestation of scholarship. That's what this is all about, the scholarship of. So each of those four things is a manifestation in different forms of scholarship in its own right. And they are based, for that reason, on the same foundation. Imagine the pillars on a big plinth. Or, if you want to change the metaphor, as I would like to trees, they have their roots, they all have their roots in the same fertile soil. However, in spite of their commonalities, the relationships between the pillars is complex. We cannot just assert linkage between them and leave it at that. For example, it is commonly claimed, particularly at my own university, that, quote unquote, a good researcher is a good teacher. Many people would believe it. Yet, many serious studies have indicated that this is by no means necessarily the case. Interestingly too, a scholar is not necessarily a researcher, and a researcher is not necessarily a scholar. One hopes that they are both. So that kind of view, just taking it as take for granted, good researcher is a good teacher. That kind of unsubstantiated view can block the understanding of teaching as an area of learnable expertise, and therefore can undermine the professionalization of teaching, and therefore can undermine our collective capacity to do what is so much needed in South Africa, and that is to develop educational approaches that can be effective in diverse or quaintly called non-traditional contexts that we experience all the time. If superficial views like this can obstruct progress, there is just as big a danger in separating the main categories of academic work into silos, or creating hierarchies of respect for them. Unfortunately, though, this is widespread in our system and many others. Lots of examples. Ample evidence, for example, of research being regarded as the only true intellectual sign of intellectual expression. So elevated above other things as if that's unquestioned. On the other hand, for example, interdisciplinary research is often marginalized in spite of all the talk, on the grounds that it lacks the depth generated by highly focused, intensely specialized work. In other words, fault is found with it by people in a specific discipline because it is not deep enough in their discipline, and yet they are losing sight of the amazing insights that we have to gain from interdisciplinary thinking. Community engagement is often seen as insufficiently intellectual. Teaching, as I've said, is relegated within the narrow bounds of what the British call craft knowledge. You teach as you were taught. You're an apprentice. I should, by the way, because this is going to sound very anti-research, and I'm already sensing extreme hostility from parts of the audience. Only increasing my fear. I want to disclaim a little bit, because I want to clarify my position in saying, while the focus of my work is on educational process, the bulk of my actual work has taken the form of research and research-based writing, directed mainly at the higher education sector as a whole. I consequently have a huge respect for research and a love for it. I have a respect, though, for all of the pillars. I would be totally opposed to any one of them being diminished, but I do not see any one of them as superior to the others. We see these silos and hierarchies played out in many ways in many universities. They are commonly entrenched in criteria for academic staff selection, promotion, performance appraisal, and awards for excellence, which, by the way, I'm not accusing this university of. We know this to be the case. Hierarchies are reinforced in everyday common room and corridor discourse. Many cases that I have seen, and passed on to new academic staff in the form of advice on their careers. My boy, you see that sign on the door, one dean said, or a senior lecturer or somebody said, you see that sign on your door that says consultation hours, whatever to whatever? Cut them by half. You know these committees that you serve on? Don't do it. All you have to worry about, 3 papers a year. And then you will get one. Of course, papers are usually a positive change in who benefits from higher education in South Africa thus far. And I'm afraid I don't see a lot of convincing evidence of great future improvement. Are we, I ask you, producing the numbers and mix of competent graduates that we need in the country? Is our research sufficiently geared to addressing our most pressing problems? In some cases it is. Are we taking our community engagement seriously enough? I'm afraid my answer to these questions is they are negative. And the situation should, for example, no more so than prioritizing access over success. What is rewarded in this country? It's access. We give very little reward to the institutions for success. That is very telling to us. And in my view, as I say, universities must take responsibility for the broader effects of their work on the society. So then, recognizing the interdependence of these great pillars of academic work is a critical element in enabling the higher education sector to play its full role. Are we must ask, being hamstrung by fragmentation in our ability to address our deeply endemic inequalities in the country? Perhaps most importantly, I believe we must deal decisively with the apparently never-ending tension between research, the creation of knowledge, and, call it teaching, the dissemination of knowledge. How can it be justified for either of these two key purposes of higher education to be privileged over the other, creation and dissemination, in the circumstances of our society? Who is benefiting from that? It seems clear to me also that we need to actively promote the underlying connection between the pillars if we are going to ensure that they are mutually reinforcing. It will not simply happen. And as I've said, a necessary condition for this is parity of esteem, which must be demonstrated in concrete ways, not least in the criteria on which academic work is recognized and rewarded. In conclusion, The core of my argument here is that the individual and collective strength of the main pillars of academic work, as represented by the excellent achievements that we are celebrating tonight, the strength will be greatly enhanced, first of all, by the recognition of all of these elements as integral and mutually reinforcing components of the powerful force of scholarship. Secondly, understanding in far more detail than we do the relationship between those pillars and how they can become mutually reinforcing. My architectural metaphors are getting into trouble in this. And all of this rests on the acknowledgement and understanding of the essential underlying unity of academic thought and creativity. There is much work to be done. Perhaps, colleagues, in future there may be a new category of awards celebrated at this event. An award for outstanding contributions to forging productive interaction between our great pillars. Thank you very much.
We are a country obsessed with numbers. You get the MDP saying we must produce 5,000 PhDs a year, and then you ask yourself how, when the rural schools are still failing to even send 100 students to university.
Where we're going to get those people who are going to do the PhDs, and the people that we're producing at master's level, do they qualify for those PhDs? But anyway, for the viewers at home, the hashtag is UN Excellence Awards, and on Facebook it is official UN, Twitter UN Varsity, Instagram UN Varsity, and on YouTube UN Varsity. The status will now be served. Mr. DJ, please don't play amapiano. There's only a few young people here. Play the music that caters to our elders. Thank you.